is we're going to be making a test sock. So this is just a simple sock that I used to figure out how to make a sock on the loom. So I'm going to make another one identical to this one. And then I will have a pair that fit Chloe. So when making a sock, there are 5 parts of the sock. Okay, so there's the top hem, which is your stretchy part that holds on. Then there is the leg, which I actually don't have a leg on this one. I just have like one row of it. But that would be the part from the cuff to the heel. Okay, so that's the cuff or the top hem. Then there's the heel. This section that goes snug along your foot is called the tube. And then your toe. So those are the 5 parts. Cuff or top hem. So cuff, leg, heel, tube, toe. This is called a sock loom. So this one is really neat because a knob here that allows this to move as needed for however big or small you're making your sock. This is your latch hook tool, whatever you want to call it. And then there's another one that has 2 doubles, and that one's used for purling, but I don't personally prefer it. But if you like it and have figured out how to use it, awesome. So I'm just going to be using my scrap yarn. It's an acrylic wool blend. I don't have the ball band, so I don't know who it was made by. So one trick that I always do when working on my loom is I put a little, this is a piece of straw, or for bigger yarns, I use a pen that's got the ends removed, and I string it through because it just makes it a little bit easier. Now this little nifty gadget is called a yarnet bowl. And it's really neat because you can put your stitch markers in the bottom of it, pins, whatever you need. And the silicone bottom makes it stick on the surfaces that you're using it on. So I'm just gonna plop this in here. So I'm just gonna put it through like that. Here we go, and see, it just pulls nicely through like that. Okay, so to start off with, I am just going to, okay, so I'm going to start here, and this is going to be my starting peg. And so I need to make a slip knot on here, same way I do for my knitting, or same way I do for my crocheting. I'm just going to put it on there like that. We're going to start off with doing what is called an E-wrap. So an E-wrap is you go around from behind and you work it counterclockwise around your peg. So because this is just a test sock, I'm just doing 30 pegs, but you can figure out how many you will need for your sock size. There are lots of books, patterns, and PDFs. So there's our first row along there. So I like making sure that it is pushed to the bottom, and then we're going to do another E-wrap around the rest of it. So you can see this one I'm kind of wrapping towards the tip of the pegs. I've got 2 loops on each peg. So I'm just going to kind of pull this tight and just wrap it around a couple of times around another peg there, just to kind of keep it solid while I start my project. This is called casting on. We've got our 2 rows. Then we're going to take this bottom loop and just pull it right up over top of the top loop. Bottom over the top. Bottom over the top. And we are going to repeat this all the way around, and then that is our cast on. So it's like casting on with knitting, or your foundation chain with crocheting. Some people like to have their hook like this and go scrape it up. For this stitch, you can just do whatever you are comfortable with doing. And there we go. So this is our top hem. We're starting our cuff, right? So to do that, I'm going to do what a 1 by 1 ribbing. What that means is I'm going to do 1 knit and 1 purl. 1 knit, 1 purl. So to work that, I like having my stitches kind of working in the middle of the peg. So I'm knitting this peg by just making a U around it, and then I'm taking the bottom one and pulling it up over top of the stitch I just made. Now to purl this stitch, I need to have this going at the bottom. So then I take this one, I go down and loop this one up, and then pull that over and place it back on. That is my purl. So we go, knit is on top, you take the bottom one and pull it over, and then purl is it this, our working yarn goes underneath, and we go down, wrap it around, pull it up, off, and then back over that peg. So we've done a knit, purl, knit, purl. Something else you can do is you can just take a piece of tape, masking tape, scotch tape. Okay, I like doing a little flap at the end so that I can easily peel it off. And I'm just going to put it along here like that. Now I'm going to take my marker and I am going to just put a mark on each peg that I am purling. So knit, purl, knit, purl, knit, purl, knit, purl, knit, purl. Okay, so I've got all of my purl stitches marked with my silver pen, or my silver marker on my tape, so that when I'm done I can just peel it off and I have it marked up my sock board. So that I left off with a purl, and we're going to knit this next one by doing a U-wrap. So we wrap towards the front like that. And then we're going a purl, so we wrap again like a U, but we're going below. And we go down, up, off, and back on. Knit, bottom up and over, purl, this working edge to the bottom, is row 1 of our ribbing completed. So we're going to repeat that pattern by knit, purl, knit, purl, knit, purl for about 1 inch or 2.5 centimeters. And I found on this one it was 10 rows. So that's knit. So remember, when you're knitting, it's up top. Purling is below. So knit top. Purl below. And you guys will see me back once I'm finished my cuff. Okay. So now we're going to do 1 row of just knit around. So you can use the E-wrap, which is like this, and wrap around the whole entire pegs. But that's going to cause your stitches to look a little twisted, but that's okay. If you are more comfortable doing that, do it that way. There's the flat wrap, which is straight across. And you can just go like that, but that makes it really tight, okay? I like doing the U-wrap for this because then it gives you a little bit of space to work with. And it's already what we've been doing for the rest of the things. So we do knit 1 row around, and then we will be starting on the heel. That's what I'm doing. So I'm just doing like my test little tiny sock. So if you're doing an actual sock, this would be leg. So we finished our top hem, our cuff, and now we're working on the leg. So you would do the leg part here for as long as you are actually wanting your sock to be. And so if you did your gauge, you'll know how many rows per inch or centimeter that you need to make for getting it to the right length. Okay, so there we go. So there's my 1 row of just U-wrap all the way around. That's my leg. Like I said, again, continue however long you're doing for your leg. So we are ready to work on our heel. So I have a total of 30 pegs. You're going to want to take half of however many pegs you have. So I have 30 pegs. That means I'm going to be working on 15 pegs. Completely forget about the other half of the pegs. So my 15 is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. If you have to, take your piece of tape, put a tape there, mark it with your marker, put a stitch marker over this one so that you know where your start, your first peg is, and your 15th peg is, okay? Or where your other half of your peg is. So to start off with, we are going to just U-wrap or line wrap, whichever you are more comfortable with. Both serve their purpose. And I'm going to work not to the 15th peg, but I'm going to work to the 14th peg. So I'm going to work to the second last peg. Okay, so this was my second last peg here. I'm going to pull my yarn to the front. Okay, then I'm going to lift off my last peg, lift it up without dropping it. I'm still holding it on. I'm going to wrap counterclockwise, and I'm going to put this back on there. So I now have 2 loops on my last peg. So now I'm going to work back towards my first, so I am heading towards the right, and I am just going to continue to U-wrap, and I'm going to U-wrap to my second last peg. So this is my second last peg. I'm going to pull my yarn forward. I'm going to pull this loop off, and I'm going to wrap it clockwise around and back down, leaving me with 2 stitches. Okay, so this is no longer a working peg. This is my first working peg now. Okay, so then I'm going to just work a loop over there. So this is going to be my last working peg for the next round. So I am working towards the second last peg, going towards the left. So last row, my second last peg was my 14, right? But this is no longer a working peg because it's got 2 loops on there, so we are ignoring it now. This is my last peg. So I'm going to pull my yarn forward, loop that off while keeping it on my hook, and then wrap counterclockwise and put that loop back down. Now this peg has 2 loops on it, just like this one. That means this is no longer a working peg. This is my first working peg. It'll also be my last working peg for the next row. So then I'm working, again, just U-wrap or line wrap to the second last peg, second last working peg, to the second last working peg of this row. Okay, so this is my second last working peg because this one's got 2 on it. So this was the first peg I did last time, so it's a working peg. So I'm pulling my yarn forward. And the reason I pull my yarn forward like that is because if I was to keep it back here and then go like this, I mean, it can tangle a little bit and you're more likely to drop this stitch. So that's why I like working with it pulled forward. Then you wrap it clockwise and put that back on. This is no longer a working peg now. This is our next working peg. So we're going to keep doing that in that fashion, working towards the left, towards our second last working peg. So again, this was our second last one. On our last working loop, we're pulling our yarn forward, hooking that loop up and off, but keeping it on our hook, wrapping counterclockwise and down. So then this one becomes our next working peg. So that's up and off, and then we work towards the right with our U-wrap or our line wrap until we are at our second last working peg, and then we repeat that. So that's our second last peg. So I've got my yarn pulled forward, I'm pulling that loop up and off but holding it, and then on this one I'm wrapping clockwise. So work towards the left to the second last peg, lift off, wrap underneath counterclockwise. So left is counterclockwise. When you're working towards the right, it's clockwise. You're going to continue that until 1/3 of your stitches on the right side are double wrapped. The middle third are loose, and then the end third are double wrapped. I do find it easier to work with my stitches at the middle of the pegs. So because I'm working with 15 stitches, that means my 5 here are now looped. So I've got one more row going this way. 2, 3, 4. This is going to be my 5th doubled wrapped one there. So now, so that is all of the decreasing we're doing. So we've increased the heel here. You can see it's got more here than it does over here. So we are going to just 1, 2, 3, 4, and this is going to be our 5th one, so we don't do anything with this one. So we're going to go through and we're going to work our 5 stitches, or our middle third. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, and that brings us to our very first one that has a double wrap. What we're going to do is we're going to pull our yarn forward. We're going to pull off both of the loops on there and just pull it up. And since we're on the left, we wrap counterclockwise. And then both of those loops need to go back on that peg. So that's going to make us have 3 loops on this peg. And then we're going to U-wrap our middle third again. Okay, and this is our first one with 2 loops on it. So we're going to pull our yarn forward, pull both of those loops off while holding them onto the hook. And since we're on the right, we are wrapping clockwise. And then both need to go back down. And sometimes getting both of them down is a little tricky. Make sure you don't drop them. If you need to do them individually, using one with one hook and then the second one with a second hook, if you find that easier, that is okay. Now we are going to work back towards our one over here that has 3 stitches on it. This is 1, 2, 3. We are going to take all 3 of those loops and knit them off. So you wrap, and all 3 of those stitches need to come up, off, and there we go. So now this is the next one with 2 loops on it. This goes down in front. These come off, and we are counterclockwise wrapping that on there. These both go on there. Da-da-da-da-da. So then this has got our 1, 2, and this is going to be our 3rd loop on there. And we work back towards the right, U-wrapping or line wrapping, till we get to the one with 3 on it. 1, 2, 3, there we go. You can see this one's got 2 on it. So we do U-wrap, and all 3 of those loops got to come off, up and off. There we go. We bring our yarn forward. These 2 loops on the next peg come off, holding them on our hook, and we wrap clockwise, and they go back on. And now this one has 3 on it. Work towards the left. That's our 1, 2, 3, and all 3 of those need to come up, off, and up, over, and off. There we go. So then this one's got 2 on it. We go towards the front, and then these ones come up, over, and are held counterclockwise, and put both loops back down on the peg. This one's got 1, 2, 3 on it. So do you remember what we do? We do a U-wrap, and those come off. There we go. Your yarn comes forward. This has got 2 on it. And we wrap clockwise. And that now has 3 stitches on it. 1, 2, and this is going to be the 3rd. So continue that till we get to our first peg and our number 15 peg, and I'll show you what to do at that point. So that's my last one. I've got one more over here with 3 loops. So this will be my last repeat. So that's off there. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to make this one so my yarn is there. So this is my 16th stitch. We didn't work this one with our heel. And then we're going to work back. So our 16th peg has 2 on it. So we're going to work back to that first one. Okay, so this one's got 3 on it. We're just going to U-wrap and do all 3 loops off the peg. And then this was our 30th peg. This is our peg that we haven't worked this peg since we started our heel. So we're going to actually just do another lift off and wrap it around and put it back on. That's all we're doing on that last peg right now. Then that is our heel. So you can see we've got this pocket kind of forming right there, right? So when you take it off, that's what it's going to look like. So this right here, our back and forth over those is what we worked on. And so you can see by us looping those 3 over top there, it gives us a nice seam. And on the inside, it's not going to be noticeable either. So it's not going to rub your feet or hurt your feet in any way. Now we are on to the tube of the sock. That's this part, in between here. The part that snugs along your metatarsals. So then we're going to start back on our 1, and we're just going to either U-wrap or flat wrap however many rows to get our length. And so this one has 2 loops on it, right? We're just going to work that, the 2 loops just up, off and over, so that every single one only has 1 loop on it. And then this is our last one here, and it's got 2 loops on there. And we're just going to U-wrap and take those 2 loops off. And there we go. So continue just U-wrapping your rows until you have however many rows you need for the tube of your sock. So one way you can do it is you can measure from, on your foot, measure from where your heel ends to just before your toe decreases. So for this one, this was 40 rows for my tube spot. So between counting the first one after the heel, all the way to where I started doing the toe, which was exactly the same procedure as the heel. Okay, and here I am at the end of my 40 rows for the tube of my sock. So you can see it's worked out there. So there's the heel, that's the cuff, and then this is the tube. So now we're going to do the toe. it is exactly the same as the heel. So it means we do U wraps, Now on this 15th peg, we pull forward, loop it up and off, and wrap counterclockwise. And we leave it looped, and then we go to the next one and go back to our second last stitch, our second last peg of this row. Okay, so this is our last one. That was our second last one. So we lift this one, pull it forward, lift this one up, go clockwise around that one, and put it back down. We leave the last stitch, so there will be 2 loops on there. We work to our second last peg. On the last peg, we lift up, wrap it around, put it back down, and then continue working to the second last peg until you have 2/3 of your pegs wrapped. 1/3 wrapped here, 1/3 unwrapped, 1/3 wrapped. And that goes with whatever size you have done, right? Because I'm just doing a small sock that is the equivalent of a kid's size 1, maybe a size 2 shoe. So if you've got an adult size sock, still you want to do 1/3. There we go. There's my last one wrapped. So now we're going to start increasing and picking those stitches up again. So we're going to go into our middle third, our first peg here that has 2 loops on it. So I'm pulled my yarn forward, I'm looping them off, and then I am doing another counterclockwise wrap and putting the stitches back on. Sometimes it's easier to put them on individually. And now this peg has this loop and the 2 that were already on there. So we're going to leave it. Now we're going to wrap the other 5 that are normal, the other middle third. This is our first peg with 2 on it. We're going to do the same thing. We're going to lift both of those loops off. And on this time, we're going to wrap clockwise and then put both loops back on the peg. And we're leaving that one with 3 loops on it. So now we're going to go work back towards the left. Okay, so this is our loop. This one here has our 3 in it. All right, 1, 2, 3. We are just going to do a regular U wrap, and all 3 of those are going to come off. Now we're pulling our yarn forward, and the next with 2 on it comes off. We wrap counterclockwise, and then both loops go back on. Sometimes it's hard, sometimes it's easy. But so now we've got 3 loops, 1, 2, 3 on there, and we're working towards the right. So this has our 3 loops on it. And we do a U wrap and wrap. Take all 3 loops off. The purple one is the one we're working with, so those 2 need to come off as well. There we go. So then I'm going to bring the yarn forward. So then these 2 are going to come off. I'm going to wrap clockwise, and then they both go back on. So I now have 3 on that one. So there's my last one with 1, 2, 3. So I'm going to wrap it, and all of those are going to come off. And I'm going to pull forward, and I'm actually going to work on the one that hasn't been worked since our last solid row. And I'm going to lift that off, and I'm going to wrap it and put it back down. So I wrapped counterclockwise. So it's got 2 on it. Okay. And then I'm going to work towards the right. Okay, and this was my starting peg, right? It's got 3 on there. So I'm going to take all 3 of those off, and I'm going to turn it. So this is my number 30 peg. And I'm going to just kind of pull my yarn forward, pull off that loop, and wrap clockwise around. So the reason I'm using the 30 peg, my 30th peg and my 16th peg, is to kind of give it a little bit more of a connection so that you don't have a gap in it. Now at this point, we are going to do one more full entire line of work. So you can either U-wrap or do the line wrap. I'm doing the line wrap right now. Again, E-wraps aren't all that great for socks. They're okay for like the casting on and doing they're okay for casting on, but the E-wraps are just too bulky and cross and can hurt your feet really if you're using them. This is our 16th peg, and it's got those 2 stitches on there. We are just going to simply yarn those 2 loops over. And we're going to keep working till we get to that last peg. And see that last one, I just looped those 2 off. There we go. So our cuff, our leg, which you probably worked more than I did, the heel, the tube, and now we've done the toe, which again was done exactly like the heel. We did 1 row, then we did 1 row of just a regular wrap. Now at this point, you can cast off. Okay, so you can do a regular bind off, cast off, which is you just do your wrap your first 2 pegs, 1, 2, you move your second peg off and onto your first peg, and then you take this loop off of here, and then you move that back to this peg. This now makes your first peg. So then you knit your second one, and your second one comes off and over, and then your bottom loop on this one comes up, off, and over, and then this loop moves over here, and that becomes your first stitch, your first peg, and you keep doing that around till you've got it done. So that's what I did on my first sock, and then I just used the whip stitch and stitched the ends together, but you can kind of see a very visible line there. So what I want to try doing is I want to try doing the Kitchener stitch. So I'm going to get this back to the way it was, and then I will start with the Kitchener stitch. Kitchener stitch on the loom. So a Kitchener stitch is something that you do to make it so there is no visible seam. So to start off with, we're going to need a long tail. This is probably more than what's needed, but I'd rather have too much than not enough. So then you need your darning needle. This one's actually kind of got a really tiny eye. I find to roll it like this and stick the eye right over top of where you need it to go and push it through while still holding on to the yarn. And that gets it on there without having to get it sticky and gross and wet. So this was our first one. This is peg 1. This was our peg 30, our last peg. So to start off with, we need to do the starting to get it to work. So there's this side of the loop, and there's this side of the loop. This is going to be our front side, and this is going to be our back side while we are working this way. Okay, when we're looking at it opposite, so we're looking up here at this one because we're going to be working at an angle like that. This is going to be the back of our work, and this is going to be the front. So this is going to be the back, that's going to be the front. So we need to do 2 steps for setup so that we can, and then we have 4 steps for a repeat. So we are going to go for this front one. We are going to insert it into the front loop towards the knitting. So we're going to go basically scoop it up and pull that through. We are not pulling it off of the peg. We're leaving it like that. Okay. Then our next step, we insert into the back loop of the back pegs, and we go pull it away from our knitting, away from the loom. So we have done our setup. Now we're going to do our repeat. Okay. So there's 4 steps at this point. Insert in and down and away from our yarn on that first peg and take the loop off. Okay. Then we are going to go back on the second peg, the front of our loop, towards our work, leaving it on the peg. So for our back pegs, we're going to go up towards on the front of the loop. So up towards, and we're going to take it off. Okay. We're going to go down the back side and away from our knitting, leaving this on the needle. So we've slipped 2 off, left 2 on. So step 1 again is we insert from on the back loop and we go away from the work, away from it, and we slide it off. Then we go, so we go up and towards our work, and we leave it on. That was step 2. Step 3 is we working on our back pegs, and we go take the front and we go up the front of that loop towards our yarn, and then we pull it up and off. Then the next peg we go down and away from, leaving it on. And we repeat those 4 steps. So I will continue going through it as I bind off, because the first few times I did it, I found it very confusing. So step 1, so we go down and away from our yarn and off. Okay, then we go this side, up the front loop, on the front peg, towards our yarn. Okay, and we leave it on. That was step 2. Step 3 is we go front loop of our back pegs, up the front loop and towards the yarn. Okay, and we slip that off. Then we go to the next peg, and this is step 4, and we go down and away from, leaving it on. Back to step 1. Step 1 is back loop on the front side, away from, and pull off. Step 2, up the next peg and towards our work, and that stays on. Step 3, up towards, off the back pegs or the back needle, and then it comes off. Step 4 is down and away from, leave on. Okay, back to step 1. Step 1 is down and away from and off. Okay. Step 2 is front loop towards our work, leave on. Step 3 is front loop towards our work on our back pegs or back needle, and it comes off the next peg, which is step 4, and we go back and away from, leave on. So you can see here that that is creating a neat little weave effect for the toe. It's capturing those working ends of the loop, and when we're done, we will tighten this string up, and it's going to practically disappear the seam. It's going to look like it's just a continuous knit stitch. It's going to be really awesome. Okay, I will keep going through my lineage in my head. So that is down, step 1, down, away, and off, up, towards, on. Back loops, step 3, front, towards, and off. Step 4, back loop, back peg, back, away, stay on. Okay, step 1. that leaves us with 2 stitches left. So we are going to do front, down, away, and off. And we're going to do front, up, towards, and off. So we've kind of got a mess right now. So if you were actually using knitting needles, you would have been pulling these tight as you went. So I'm going to start at where we started, and I'm just going to start, I'm going to tug. Okay, now I'm going to tug the next one. So once you've got all of those loops pulled tight, take a look at that seam. If it wasn't for the different colors of the variegated yarn, you wouldn't be able to see that, compared to the toe of my first sock, which was done in a whip stitch. That is pretty awesome. It's coffee time, Starbucks lattes. You gotta keep a tight tension on it or it does that. I'm going to just take this off. Ta-da! Down, off. You guys must be sick of me repeating myself. I know I am.